Hello audience, it's 𝗏𝗺𝗵𝘁𝘂𝗀𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗶𝐺. Welcome you to this very special interview, and I have with me my guest is Mr. Michael Kugelman. He is the Senior Fellow Asia Pacific Foundation, and he is a long time you are working about South Asia and especially on Bangladesh. Most welcome to our show, Mr. Kugelman. How are you?
Thank you. Great to be here with you. I'm well. Hope you are too.
So how was your Dhaka trip this time?
Great. I mean, it's been these trips are always too short. Pack a lot into the schedule, but it's been great. A lot of interesting meetings. Met a lot of interesting people, and I always enjoy, in particular, my discussions with young people.
Okay. My first question would be, Kugelman, in the aftermath of mass uprising, I mean in August 2024, how do you assess the current situation or state of Bangladesh?
Yeah, I mean, it's been more than a year now, and what stands out to me is just that, for the most part, people are happier and freer than they were before the uprising, before the fall of the previous regime. But the sense I get, this trip and also my previous trip, which was back in January, is a sense of growing impatience and unease among the public regarding the government, particularly given economic stress, concerns about the law and order situation, and a lack of clarity about where the reforms process stands.
Where do Bangladesh-US relations stand today? I mean, right now, did ties between Dhaka and Washington experience some cooling after the Trump administration come to the power?
I mean, I don't think that they suffered, but the relationship changed in a big way. Because if you look at how the relationship was during the last few months of the Biden administration, it was very focused around U.S. commitment to work with Bangladesh to rebuild the country, to consolidate democracy. A lot of discussion about development assistance and technical assistance for reforms. But President Trump is not interested in that type of cooperation. For him, bilateral relationships are more commercial focused. So I think now the relationship is going to focus a lot more around trade issues. And of course, Bangladesh was hit with U.S. reciprocal tariffs, but I understand that trade talks are happening, they're going well. And bottom line is that Bangladesh is not really going to be on the radar of the Trump administration, at least initially. That may be a good thing, right? Because you see what's happened to countries like India that are very much on the radar, and there's been all kinds of problems.
So you said the priorities between two countries have already been changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, President Trump, he suspended most foreign aid. He dismantled USAID, so development cooperation is not going to be a thing. And President Trump, he doesn't like what he describes as nation building. And so this idea of the U.S. working with Bangladesh through, helping provide technical assistance for reforms, this is what the Biden administration pledged to do. This is not going to work for Trump. He just has a different set of priorities for how he looks at not just this relationship with Bangladesh, but any U.S. relationship.
You know better that there were some core issues between Dhaka-Washington relationship, that is like governance, democracy, human rights, rights of minority peoples. Is these issues are still working, or these are, history now?
Yeah, this is all history. President Trump has a very strict interest-based approach to foreign policy, which means that he's not going to pursue foreign policy based on this notion around promoting values like rights or democracy. It doesn't matter to him. He's much more transactional, much more commercial. So this is why I say that the nature of the relationship has changed a lot since Trump came back to power.
Some people argue that United States played a very vital role during this uprising in July, August, or the movement against Awami League regime. How do you respond to this claim?
Well, there's been a lot of conspiracies about what role the U.S. had, and my sense is that the U.S. actually went rather quiet in the months before Bangladesh's last election. When you had, essentially the U.S. decided for whatever reason not to be applying public pressure on the 𝗔𝗍𝗃 regime. And then after Bangladesh's election, when 𝗔𝗍𝗃 came back in an election that clearly was not legitimate, the U.S. wanted to focus on wanted to reset the relationship. So I have no reason to believe that the U.S. had any involvement with the events leading to the mass movement. One thing that I find so admirable about the mass uprising, aside from the horrible tragedy of the deaths, but what's inspiring about it is that it was organic. It was led by mainly young people, of course, and it led to a result that we had not seen here in previous years when you had protests. It actually succeeded in ousting an authoritarian leader.
So how do you evaluate the last 1 year of this interim government led by Nobel laureate Professor Dr. Yunus?
I mean, there were very high expectations for this interim government, and the interim government was very ambitious. It set high expectations as well. And that puts you in a difficult spot, right? When you say you're going to pass far-ranging reforms, you're going to bring the economy back into stability, you're going to strengthen democracy. It takes a long time. And this government is, of course, not an elected government. It's an interim government. It was supported widely when it first took power. But I think that there's only so much that a government without a formal mandate from the people can do, and people will get impatient when they don't see the results they want to see. So it's that combination of high expectations, ambitious goals, and then the reality that the government did not have a mandate from the people. Naturally, it's going to make the public unhappy and uneasy. So I think that given where things were, how things were in this country before the mass uprising, I think that the interim government has done an admirable job, but there is still a lot of challenges, and there's going to be a lot of work that will, assuming the election takes place in February, a lot of work will have not been finished by this interim government.
Yeah, you have already tell me about the, tariff policy of Donald Trump. So there is a framework agreement was supposed to be signed between Dhaka and Washington. So how Bangladesh could be profitable after signing this framework agreement or Trump policy?
Bangladesh, of course, is heavily dependent on export markets in the U.S. Especially RMG, almost uniquely RMG. It's one of the top, it's the top export destination. So, you're talking about 19–20% tariffs. That's pretty significant, especially because Bangladesh's economy, I would argue, is relatively fragile in the sense that it emphasizes one export. There's not much diversification in its export economy. You don't have high levels of FDI coming into Bangladesh, so that means that the tariffs could be costly. This is why I think that the trade talks are very important. I hope that they make progress. My understanding is that they have. Bangladesh's government has been willing to make concessions to the U.S. But at the end of the day, for the Trump administration, the single most important data point when it's weighing what to do about these tariffs is it seeing an indication on the part of the countries targeted by the tariffs to buy more American goods. That's what it wants to see. There's a trade deficit because, of course, Bangladesh sends a lot more to the U.S. than it brings back. And I think that it will be looking to see that commitment from Dhaka, that Bangladesh is willing to significantly increase the share of goods that it buys and imports from the U.S.
I think already you have touched this issue. My question was linked to the tariff issue, is Bangladesh being pressured enough to purchase things or goods like Boeing aircraft or wheat from United States?
Well, I'm sure it is. I mean, this is how these trade talks are going, not just with Bangladesh, but with any country. The U.S. wants Bangladesh and other countries to buy more American goods. Now, Bangladesh is at an advantage in the sense that the relationship is fairly friendly at the moment. You have a country like India, which has been increasing its imports of American goods for a number of years, but that did not help its cause in trade talks, in part because that relationship was already in crisis. But the U.S.-Bangladesh relationship right now, it's not deep and multifaceted, but it's crisis-free. And so I think that so long as Bangladesh makes clear to the Trump administration that it's willing to buy more American products, if that's something Dhaka can commit to doing, I think there's a good chance that eventually there will be a deal, and we'll see these tariffs reduced, if not eliminated. But it's going to take some time, I think.
Kugelman, now it's time to take a break. I have a few more questions to you, and we're coming back soon. Dear audience, we are taking a break, coming back within a few minutes. Dear audience, welcome back again. We are talking with Michael Kugelman, a South Asia specialist from USA. Kugelman, my question was about politics. How do you see the political scenario, especially after banning the activities of Awami League?
That's a tough one right there. I think that for me, one of the things I'm looking to see in politics in Bangladesh, one of the signposts I'm looking for, indication of how things are going to go in the months ahead, and also the chances of seeing democracy consolidated, is a reduction of what I would describe as retributive politics. Essentially these deep levels of polarization where the party in power essentially tries to sideline the opposition. And so we now have a situation where the 𝗲𝗲𝗃 League has indeed been banned. And I think the risk there is that that could compound this problem of retributive politics. And you know, I think that this election, I don't want to be too speculative, but I think there's a very good chance that the BNP will be in a position to lead the next government. And the 𝗲𝗲𝗃 League has been banned for now. And I think that the dynamics of that could be risky in terms of internal political stability. I also worry in the more immediate term that with the 𝗲𝗲𝗃 League banned from the election, that once the election campaign begins, you could have spoilers that try to stage violence and cause trouble. I hope it doesn't come to that, but that certainly is a very real risk. So for me, that's one thing that has to change. And this is not a challenge that only Bangladesh faces. You have deep levels of political polarization in many countries, including my own, but here it's the violence risk that comes from deep levels of political polarization. That's what I worry about.
Yeah. Recently, BNP Secretary General 𝗥𝗶𝗴𝗵𝗁𝗃𝗂𝗁𝗃𝗃, he is one of the top leader of BNP. He remarked that right-wing politics is on the rise in Bangladesh. What is your observation on this trend?
Right-wing politics?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have seen with these major political changes here since last August, more space being provided for particular actors, particularly those religious actors that I guess one could characterize as on the right. And there's nothing wrong with that, so long as that space is used by these groups in a peaceful, constructive way. Where you have to worry is if this space becomes used by those actors that don't support democracy, that that promote certain narratives that are not helpful to the country's democratization and stability. So that I think is the concern. What I really worry about more than anything else is the risk of terrorism, right? I mean, we know that Bangladesh in the past has had some difficult moments with terrorism, and we have had in recent months some militant leaders that have been released from jail. My understanding is that some weeks back there were several people that were arrested on allegations of ties to a Pakistani terror group, Tehreek-e Taliban Pakistan. This is something that is very concerning, and I think that I would hope that this would be something that the next government, whoever leads it, would be focused on to make sure that you don't have a resurgence of this very troubling of this problem that you had some years ago.
So to solve all the crises, finally, how important is the upcoming election in Bangladesh scheduled for February, and what is your overall assessment? Do you find any challenge to held the election in the declared time?
So, I mean, my view as an outside analyst, in particular based on my many conversations over the last week, is that certainly there are a few political parties and other factions that might have an interest in the election not happening on time or not happening, but my sense is that the public, which is what matters the most, the population, the general population, wants the elections to happen and to happen on time in February. So I fear that if the elections don't happen, or they're delayed, or they're not seen as free or fair or legitimate, that you could have fresh risks of instability and political instability. There's a lot at stake for these elections, and I think that Bangladesh is still at a pivotal moment. It's been a year since the mass uprising. A lot of very important work has been done with reforms and so on, but there's still a lot more work to be done, particularly when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the internal security situation with law and order. So that means that there's going to be a lot at stake with this election, because of whoever leads the next government is going to have a lot of major responsibilities, and like the interim government last year, will face expectations, high expectations, and probably a lot of pressure from the general public.
How do you evaluate the foreign policy of Professor Yunus, especially in the last 1 year?
I mean, I think that what stands out the most, a major change from the past, is his approach to India. This is, I think, the biggest, maybe the only major change in Bangladesh's foreign policy since the interim government came to power. Clearly, we're seeing a much different relationship with India, right? We saw for many years during the 𝗖𝗍𝗃 era a very special relationship with India that entailed essentially letting India influence Bangladesh to the point that it constrained it constrained Bangladesh's foreign policy choices. And Bangladesh has always had a strategic autonomy policy. It sought to balance ties with different countries. That didn't happen in the 𝗖𝗍𝗃 era, but with Yunus, we've seen a very different relationship with India, which has provided space for Bangladesh to ramp up ties with China, even more so than they were in the 𝗖𝗎 era. Bangladesh did strengthen its ties with China in the 𝗖𝗎 era, but most importantly, we've seen Bangladesh look to reset its relationship with Pakistan, which is significant. I do think and hope that the next government will look to balance its relations with both India and Pakistan and China. I think Bangladesh and India, for that matter, have a lot to gain from having a more friendly, workable relationship. Not like how it was during the 𝗖𝗎 era, but a healthy, friendly and workable relationship.
Yeah, the US has not had an ambassador in Dhaka for quite a long time. Recently, the ambassador to India was also given responsibility for Bangladesh and some other countries. Should this be seen as a neglect of Bangladesh from Washington?
I mean, it always takes a long time, regardless of the U.S. government. It always takes a long time to nominate new ambassadors, and then they have to be confirmed in the U.S. Senate. That's a process that takes a long time. So I don't think that this is something that reflects neglect toward Bangladesh. It's just U.S. bureaucracy in action. But I do think what is significant is that the new nominee to be the U.S. ambassador to India indeed has been appointed as special envoy to South Asia. This is a title that's never been used before, and the special envoy position should not require U.S. Senate confirmation, which means that Mr. Gore could take up this position very soon. And I know that many here in Bangladesh have long worried that the U.S. will look at its relationship with Bangladesh through the lens of India. If you have the special envoy to South Asia, i.e. someone who has responsibility for policy toward Bangladesh, based in New Delhi as the U.S. ambassador to India, I think that will amplify those fears that many in Bangladesh have. But then again, given how bad the U.S.-India relationship is now, I don't necessarily think the U.S. is going to be paying significant amounts of attention to what New Delhi might be advising it to do on Bangladesh. There's not much dialogue happening at all between the U.S. and India now.
Okay. As we are talking about India, could the ongoing tensions between Bangladesh and India relations have an impact on United States, or making the one ambassador as the special envoy of South Asia, does it reflect this? I mean, is America is going to be a mediator between these this tension between Dhaka and Delhi?
It's a good point. I do think that this post could be used, or the U.S. could try to have it be used for mediation purposes, but not between India and Pakistan, not between India and Bangladesh, between India and Pakistan. I mean, President Trump has made clear that he wants to help. He thinks he can solve the Kashmir crisis. India has no interest in that. Pakistan probably wouldn't be interested in a mediator being based in India. But I just think that the U.S. relationship with Bangladesh is going to be a very narrowly focused one, which is in some ways okay. It's going to revolve around the issue of trade, maybe some other issues, maybe some limited cooperation in other areas. But I really don't think the Trump administration is going to let India, if relations get better between the U.S. and India, is not going to let India dictate how the U.S. relationship with Bangladesh should be. And I hope not. I hope that's not the case, because the healthiest relationships are those where each side sees the other through the lens of the bilateral relationship and not through the lens of a third country.
Okay. My next question would be, is Washington concerned about Bangladesh growing ties with China, or about the renewed closeness, very recently it happened, between India and China?
I don't think so. It's unclear what the Trump administration thinks about China. It hasn't articulated a clear policy. Sometimes it acts like it sees China as a competitor, as a rival, as a threat. Other times it seems like it sees China as a potential partner. Trump spoke with President Xi some months ago, and then he said he wants to work with China to promote peace and cooperation. So I don't think that, we don't know yet. We don't know how the U.S. will look at China. If this administration concludes that China is the strategic competitor or rival threat that it has been, then I think that there would be concern about what Bangladesh might be doing with China, what India might be doing with China. The India-China reset should not be overstated. That's still a very strained relationship. And with Bangladesh, I think that Bangladesh has a strong relationship with China, but it's looking to balance that with India, its relations with the U.S. and others. So I don't really think the administration will be bothered by any of these things at this point.
Although sometimes U.S. companies has expressed interest in deep sea oil and gas exploration, but no visible progress has been made in last 12 years. It was from 2013, 2014. So there are also rumors that United States wants to establish a base in the Bay of Bengal. Is there any truth on this? and there are a lot of rumors about our Saint Martin, the island, and people perception is very negative regarding these issues.
Right. Yeah, there's long been conspiracies about the U.S. and I think that's in part because in the past, the U.S. It did meddle in the region in years past. It's not as active and present in South Asia as it was decades ago, particularly during the Cold War. But no, the U.S. does not have any intention of securing St. Martin's Island. And it's interesting that the allegation came from Sheikh Hasina. It came from other leaders in Bangladesh well before her as well. So for whatever reason, there's been this conspiracy. I think the U.S. certainly views the Bay of Bengal as an important space, particularly in the context of great power competition, because as it's seen China be able to project more power further west into the Indian Ocean region, including into the Bay of Bengal, that's registered as a concern for the U.S. The first known Chinese overseas military base was in Djibouti, and right in the western fringes of the Indian Ocean region, near the Bay of Bengal. So, the U.S. is certainly focused on the Bay of Bengal. It knows that Russia hopes to build a deep sea port. It knows that China wants to do that as well. I'm not aware of the U.S. having any plans to build a port, much less a base. I'm not aware of this, and I definitely don't think the Trump administration would want to do that, given that it wants to play less of a role in the world. It wants to sort of retreat and focus more on commercial opportunities like critical minerals, not building big infrastructure and things like that.
So this is my last question. How do you foresee, what's your assessment of future Dhaka-Washington relationship? What do you want to see after 3 or 4 years? Where a bilateral relation will stand?
I'd like to see the relationship pursued on its own merits. That's what I'm going to be looking for, and not letting China or India or other countries shape the way that the U.S. looks at the relationship. I really think there is potential for commercial cooperation, but there's other ways that I'd be looking for the U.S. and Bangladesh to cooperate. There's things that the U.S. can do in the private sector. You have some American companies that have, well, of course, there are some American companies investing here now, but not that many. There's not much of a foreign corporate presence here. So maybe there'd be opportunities to explore that would entail U.S. businesses, more U.S. businesses looking to invest here. That's more likely, of course, if the investment climate improves, and that would entail more political stability. So if there's more political stability, if you have democracy return, that would make investors more comfortable. So that could be an important component of the relationship right there as well. And also beyond that, multilateral cooperation. Maybe there's ways for the U.S. and Bangladesh to cooperate more in like military exercises, that type of thing. This has already been happening, but the relationship doesn't only have to be bilateral. It could be multilateral as well.
Thank you, Michael Kugelman, for your valuable time, and thank you for your deeper insight. It will definitely enrich my audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dear audience, this was our discussion. Thank you for being with us.